You've done the affirmations, the journaling, the meditations, the vision boards, every step, every day, and the outside still looks the same. Then something stranger happens. The routines that used to feel natural start slipping, old habits resurface without warning, and your focus swings between effort and silence. Nothing is wrong, but nothing is clear either. This is the part most people never name. The phase where the old version of you stops fitting, and the new one hasn't fully arrived. No checklist, no milestones, no proof, just a pause where everything underneath is being rearranged before anything can show up on the surface. Have you ever found yourself doing everything right, following every manifestation technique, reciting every affirmation, meditating, journaling, and yet nothing seems to change? Or worse, the more you try, the more frustrated, stuck, or even empty you feel. If this resonates, you're not alone, and what's happening isn't a failure on your part. What you are experiencing is the invisible, often overlooked stage in spiritual transformation and reality shifting. The identity phase nobody talks about. It's a quiet, subtle, and sometimes unsettling space. You can't see it, you can't measure it, and it doesn't come with a checklist. Yet, it's the moment when your old self begins to die, when the familiar patterns that once defined you no longer fit, and before your new self can fully emerge. It's the liminal zone between who you were and who you are becoming. And for most people, it's profoundly uncomfortable. Think of it like this. If manifestation and reality shifting are a process of quantum recalibration, then the identity phase is the recalibration itself. It's the energetic pause, the silent reorganization, the invisible work happening beneath the surface. It's why sometimes, after months of effort, you might feel less aligned than before. Why you might feel a heaviness in your chest, a restlessness in your mind, or even a subtle sense of grief over the old you. This phase doesn't look like success because it's not about visible results. It's about internal restructuring. Here's the thing. The old you, the version of yourself that was comfortable, predictable, and even familiar, is no longer capable of stepping into the reality you are now calling toward. And that creates tension. Your mind, conditioned by years of patterns, wants the comfort of certainty. Your emotions resist change and your habits cling to what's known. So when your soul begins to expand, when the vibration of your consciousness rises, your old identity pushes back. And the result is often confusion, doubt, and even fear. You might notice yourself thinking, maybe this isn't working. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. That is the voice of the old identity trying to maintain control. It's not trying to harm you, it's just doing what it was programmed to do, protect you by keeping you in what is familiar. But here's the truth the spiritual guides rarely tell you. If your old identity resists, it is a sign that transformation is actively occurring. Resistance is proof, not failure. Many people try to skip this phase, rushing to the results, the shifted reality, the vision board outcomes. They push, force, overthink, or double down on manifestation techniques. And what happens? They feel more fragmented, more exhausted, more disconnected. That's because manifestation is not about doing more. It's about allowing the internal evolution that is already happening to complete itself. The work isn't in the outer world. It's in the subtle, unseen restructuring of who you are at your core. Imagine an old, worn-out house. The walls are cracked, the plumbing is outdated, the foundation is unstable. You can paint the walls, rearrange the furniture, or polish the floors, but until the foundation is addressed, nothing truly changes. The identity phase is the foundation repair. It's messy, disorienting, and sometimes scary. You might even feel like you're losing yourself. And the paradox is, in losing the old self, you are actually rediscovering your true self. This phase is often accompanied by a kind of emotional turbulence that can feel like a storm inside your mind and body. One moment you feel inspired and aligned. The next you feel numb or disconnected. One day clarity seems to shine through, and the next, confusion clouds your perception. These fluctuations are not random. They are the signs of your nervous system, your consciousness, and your energy body recalibrating to a higher frequency. The old self cannot exist in the same vibration as your emerging reality. The process is inherently destabilizing, and yet it is necessary. The reason most people struggle here is that society conditions us to seek instant validation, instant results, instant comfort. When the old self dissolves and the new self hasn't fully formed, there is a vacuum, and humans instinctively fear the unknown. But in truth, this vacuum is where magic happens. It is the quantum space where potential is limitless, where reality is malleable, where your new identity can finally emerge without the weight of old limitations. It is in this emptiness that you have the opportunity to redefine who you are at the deepest level. During this phase, your internal dialogue often becomes a mirror of your transformation. Thoughts like, "Who am I anymore?" or "I don't even know what I want," are normal. They are not signs of weakness. They are evidence that your consciousness is shedding layers of conditioned identity. And even though this may feel destabilizing, it is actually liberating. You are being given permission, unasked, perhaps even against your initial comfort, to release old identities, old beliefs, and old emotional habits that no longer serve you. The spiritual truth here is subtle but powerful. Manifestation is less about creating new outcomes and more about evolving your identity to match the reality you are calling in. Your external world is a reflection of your inner structure. If the inner structure, the identity, is shifting, then the external reality will eventually follow. But before that reflection can stabilize, you must pass through this invisible, often isolating phase. It's a rite of passage, one that is deeply personal, quietly transformative, and rarely discussed because it is uncomfortable for most to witness, even for themselves. So, how do you navigate this phase without succumbing to fear or impatience? First, you acknowledge it. You name it. You tell yourself, "I am in the identity phase. This is not failure. This is evolution." Recognition brings consciousness to the process, which is the first step toward ease. Second, you allow yourself to feel the turbulence without resistance. Cry if you need to, rest if you need to, be still if you need to. This is the phase where surrender becomes your greatest tool. Third, you remind yourself that this is temporary. The old self is dissolving and the new self is forming, but it cannot form in the shadow of resistance. And perhaps most importantly, you learn to trust yourself in the void. You learn that you are not lost, you are recalibrating. You learn to honor the discomfort as a signal that something profound is unfolding within you. Every pang of doubt, every moment of confusion, every emotional wobble is a signal that your consciousness is stretching, expanding, and aligning with a higher version of reality. By the end of this phase, you will look back and realize that the moments you thought you were stuck were actually the moments that reshaped your very essence. The identity phase nobody talks about is not a detour from manifestation. It is the highway. It is the invisible architecture of transformation. And though it may feel lonely at times, though it may feel uncertain, though it may feel like everything is unraveling, it is, in fact, the most profound gift you can receive on your journey to becoming the self you were always meant to be. After you've begun to recognize the invisible phase of transformation, the next stage often feels even more intense: the collapse of the old identity. It is here, in this quiet unraveling, that you realize everything you thought defined you, the habits, the beliefs, the self-image you carried for years, no longer serves the life you are trying to step into. And yet, the new self is not fully formed, leaving a sense of disorientation, sometimes even despair. You may feel like the ground beneath your feet has shifted, like you're standing on a cliff, looking down into a foggy abyss, unsure whether to jump or retreat. This is the crucible of transformation, where the old you must die before the new you can rise. The old identity was familiar. It was reliable. It knew how to navigate the world, how to survive, how to fit in. It had stories, routines, and a framework that made life predictable. But that predictability comes at a cost. It is limited, bound by conditioning, and often unconsciously restrictive. The old self clings to comfort, even when comfort means stagnation. And when your consciousness begins to expand, when your vibration begins to rise, the old self senses threat. It fights. Not violently, not with malice, but subtly, persistently. Through doubt, distraction, emotional instability, procrastination, and sometimes even self-sabotage, it reminds you of what is safe and familiar. You may notice patterns repeating, old habits resurfacing, old relationships triggering unresolved emotions, old fears creeping back in with a vengeance. And all of this happens just as you're trying to align with your new reality. This clash is not accidental. It is an essential part of the process. It is as if the universe itself is testing your commitment to the new you. It is the friction between what you were and what you are becoming that sparks growth, even when it feels painful. The collapse of the old identity is also deeply emotional. You might feel grief, a subtle mourning for the version of yourself that is disappearing. This grief can manifest as sadness, irritability, fatigue, or even anxiety. You may feel as though you are losing your sense of purpose, as if the anchor of your life has been pulled away, leaving you adrift. It is important to understand that this is natural. It is a necessary shedding. Just like a snake must shed its old skin to grow, your old self must dissolve to make way for the new. Part of this phase involves confronting the illusions you once held about yourself. You may have believed that you were always this way, or that your identity was fixed. You may have identified strongly with your career, your relationships, your social role, or even your limitations. The universe is now gently, and sometimes forcefully, showing you that these labels are temporary, that they are constructs, and that clinging to them keeps you from stepping into the freedom of your potential. This is why manifestation often feels like it stalls during this phase. You may have been visualizing, affirming, scripting, and yet results seem delayed or inconsistent. It's not that your efforts are failing, it's that your energy no longer matches the old identity that once produced familiar outcomes. The old identity had a predictable frequency, and your manifestations flowed within that frequency. Now, as the old self collapses, your energetic baseline shifts, creating a temporary misalignment between your inner state and the outer reality. This misalignment feels frustrating, but it is actually the signal that deep transformation is underway. In many ways, this phase is like walking through a storm in the dark. You can feel the winds of change battering you, and the path ahead is unclear. But the storm is not random. Each gust, each wave of discomfort is shaping you. Each moment of uncertainty is breaking down resistance, loosening attachments, and opening space for the new identity to emerge. The key is to move through the storm with awareness, not with panic. Awareness allows you to see the patterns, recognize the lessons, and stay anchored in the knowledge that this collapse is temporary and purposeful. You may also notice a shift in your relationships during this phase. People who were aligned with your old identity may no longer resonate with the version of you that is emerging. Conflicts may arise, some connections may fade, and new ones may naturally appear. This is not coincidence. As your inner world shifts, your outer world must recalibrate to reflect your evolving self. The collapse of the old identity is therefore both an internal and external process. It restructures how you see yourself and how the world responds to you. It is essential to embrace this phase rather than resist it. Resistance only prolongs the discomfort, deepens the confusion, and creates inner conflict. When you allow the collapse to happen, when you observe it without judgment, a profound alchemy begins. You start to see that what feels like loss is actually liberation. What feels like instability is actually fluidity. And what feels like emptiness is actually space for creation. One of the most common pitfalls during this stage is the desire to fix or accelerate the process. You may be tempted to overanalyze, overwork, or double down on techniques in an attempt to force the new identity to appear. But identity cannot be forced. It emerges naturally when the old structures dissolve, when the energy is ready to reorganize, and when you allow yourself to inhabit the liminal space fully. Pushing too hard only strengthens the old identity's grip, creating resistance and frustration. Instead, the most effective approach is one of conscious surrender. This does not mean giving up on your goals or abandoning your vision. It means trusting the process. It means recognizing that the old self is collapsing for a reason, and that the discomfort you feel is the signal that transformation is occurring beneath the surface. By observing the collapse with curiosity rather than fear, you allow the new self to begin forming organically. During this phase, small shifts become profound indicators of growth. A subtle change in your emotional response, a new clarity in your thinking, or a slight expansion in your capacity for joy or compassion. These are signs that the old identity is breaking down and the new one is taking shape. They may feel minor or imperceptible, but they are the quiet foundations of a dramatically transformed reality. It is also important to remember that the collapse of the old identity is cyclical. You may find that old habits, beliefs, or fears resurface repeatedly. Each return is not a regression. It is another opportunity to observe, release, and reinforce the emerging self. Each cycle allows you to shed layers more fully, creating a stronger, more resilient foundation for the reality you are moving toward. Ultimately, the collapse of the old identity is the doorway to freedom. It is the space where limitations fall away, where clarity emerges, and where your true potential can finally be expressed. It is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also sacred. It is the universe inviting you to step into a higher version of yourself, to let go of what no longer serves, and to align with a life that reflects your deepest truth. So if you find yourself in this stage, feeling unsteady, uncertain, or even lost, take a deep breath and remind yourself, this is the process. This is the transformation. The old you is not failing, it is releasing its grip. And every moment of discomfort is a signal that your consciousness is expanding, your vibration is rising, and your new identity is quietly taking shape beneath the surface, preparing to align with the reality you are ready to inhabit. After the old identity collapses, there comes a moment that can feel both terrifying and liberating. It is the void, the liminal space where you are no longer who you were, yet the new self has not fully formed. This is the stage that most people never talk about because it is uncomfortable, disorienting, and strangely silent. It is the space where your old patterns have dissolved, but your new framework has not yet solidified. You feel unanchored, untethered, as if you are floating in an unfamiliar universe, with all familiar markers of identity erased. And in this emptiness, you are forced to confront a truth that is both frightening and sacred. You are being reset. The void can manifest in many ways. Some experience it as emotional numbness, where joy and pain alike feel distant or muted. Others feel an intense restlessness, a constant inner agitation, as though something within them is stretching beyond comprehension. Thoughts may become erratic, memories feel distant, and your mind might oscillate between clarity and confusion in ways that are difficult to manage. This is not a malfunction of your consciousness. It is the natural process of the psyche unlearning old scripts and creating space for new ones. It is the universe stripping away all pretense so that the authentic version of you can emerge. One of the most confusing aspects of the void is the sense of loss it brings. You may find yourself asking, "Who am I now?" or "What is my purpose?" The structures that once defined you, your routines, roles, relationships, even your habits of thought, are temporarily suspended. This can feel destabilizing because humans are wired to identify with what they know. When those markers disappear, it can feel as if you are floating in a vacuum, disconnected from your own life. But paradoxically, it is in this very emptiness that the greatest potential arises. In the void, the canvas is blank, and your true self can finally begin to paint the life you were meant to live. During this stage, it is common to experience what I call identity tremors. These are moments when a faint sense of the new self flickers within you, an intuition, a feeling, or a subtle shift in perception, only to retreat back into uncertainty. You may catch glimpses of a more confident, more aligned, or more joyful version of yourself, and yet it seems just out of reach. This is natural. The void is not a place to force clarity, it is a space to witness emergence. It is the quantum field of your consciousness, where potential exists in its purest form, before it is structured into reality. It is essential to understand that the void is not a problem to be solved. It is not a stage of failure or weakness. It is the space where old limitations have been removed, allowing your energy to reorganize at a higher frequency. Imagine a seed buried underground. Before it sprouts, it exists in darkness, enveloped in soil, seemingly lifeless. Yet within that darkness, the processes of growth are quietly unfolding. Your void state functions in the same way. The old self has been buried, the new self is quietly germinating, and the world outside is waiting to reflect this transformation. One of the most powerful aspects of the void is its invitation to surrender. Unlike the collapse of the old identity, which challenges you to release, the void teaches you to let go completely. There is nothing to control here, nothing to manipulate. Attempts to force clarity, force manifestation, or force identity only create resistance and delay the natural unfolding of your transformation. The void is a space of alignment, not effort. It asks you to inhabit the unknown, to trust that the process itself is intelligent, and to allow your consciousness to settle into this spacious uncertainty. This phase also invites deep reflection on your inner world. Without the distractions of old patterns, you begin to notice subtle truths about yourself that were previously hidden. You may uncover unhealed emotional wounds, subconscious beliefs, or latent desires that were buried under layers of identity. These discoveries can feel overwhelming, but they are essential for the formation of your new self. The void is not empty in the sense of nothingness, it is empty in the sense of infinite potential. It holds all possibilities waiting for you to step fully into them. Emotionally, the void often brings a sense of paradox. You may feel liberated and trapped at the same time, inspired and exhausted, curious and fearful. These contradictions are not mistakes. They are the natural tensions of a consciousness in transition. They indicate that the old structures are dissolving and the new ones are not yet fixed. By observing these emotional fluctuations with awareness, rather than resisting them, you allow the void to serve as a crucible for transformation. Each wave of emotion is a signal, a guidepost, a subtle nudge toward your emerging self. During this stage, silence and stillness become your allies. The void often asks you to step back from the noise of the external world, the busyness, the opinions, the pressure to perform, and to turn inward. Meditation, journaling, and reflective contemplation become powerful tools, not because they produce results, but because they help you witness the quantum shifts within your consciousness. In the void, you learn to inhabit a space where identity is fluid, where your energy is the currency of creation, and where your perception shapes reality in ways that are subtle yet profound. Many seekers panic during the void because it feels like a suspension of progress. They look outward for evidence of manifestation or alignment, only to find emptiness. But the void is precisely the point at which inner alignment occurs before outer results appear. It is a gestation period. Like the chrysalis stage of a butterfly, it is hidden, quiet, and unseen, yet it is when the transformation is most active. What emerges from this phase is not a partial self. It is a complete reconfiguration of your consciousness, capable of manifesting realities that were impossible from the old identity. A common fear in the void is that the new self may never arrive, that the emptiness will stretch indefinitely, leaving a sense of existential drift. This is where trust becomes your most important skill. You must trust that the collapse of the old identity, the emotional turbulence, and the stillness of the void are all aligned with the emergence of your highest self. The void is not stagnation, it is incubation. It is the energetic rehearsal for a reality in which your identity, your desires, and your experiences are in perfect coherence. The void also allows you to step beyond the limitations of the self that was defined by fear, habit, and external validation. In this space, you are no longer bound by the constraints of your former conditioning. You are not measured by outcomes, achievements, or other people's expectations. The void teaches you to trust the intelligence of your own consciousness, to cultivate inner spaciousness, and to embrace the mystery of becoming. It is here that true creative power arises, not from effort or forcing, but from alignment and presence. Finally, the void prepares you for the emergence of your new identity. The longer you inhabit it consciously, the more subtle shifts accumulate. Your energy stabilizes, your vibration rises, and the glimpses of the new self become more frequent and tangible. This is the preparation phase for the alignment that follows, the stage where manifestation, once delayed, begins to flow effortlessly because your consciousness is now fully ready to embody it. The void is not an obstacle, it is the fertile ground in which the seeds of your new reality take root, unseen yet unstoppable. Emerging from the void, there comes a subtle but profound shift. The turbulence quiets, the restlessness softens, and you begin to feel the first threads of your new identity weaving themselves into place. This is not a dramatic, overnight transformation, but a gentle, almost imperceptible anchoring. The energy that once felt chaotic now begins to resonate in harmony with the reality you are calling in. You may notice that decisions feel easier, synchronicities appear more frequently, and moments of clarity seem to guide your steps. This is the quiet stabilization of the new self. At this stage, the focus is not on forcing outcomes, pushing manifestation techniques, or overanalyzing the process. The magic now lies in being. In the old identity, you did to prove yourself, to achieve, to validate. In the new identity, you are simply. You embody the alignment without effort. Every thought, emotion, and action begins to naturally reflect the version of you that has emerged from the void. What once required intense effort now flows effortlessly, because your consciousness has recalibrated to the vibration of your desired reality. This stage emphasizes consistency over intensity. Small, aligned actions, sustained over time, solidify the new self far more effectively than occasional bursts of effort. Your presence, your energy, and your way of being become the true vehicle for transformation. You begin to notice that the outer world responds naturally to this internal coherence. Relationships, opportunities, and experiences begin to mirror your inner stability. The universe aligns because your inner frequency has become steady, clear, and unshakable. One of the most subtle yet powerful shifts in this phase is the contrast between force and flow. The old self achieved through struggle, tension, and willpower. The new self achieves through alignment, ease, and trust. You may find that obstacles no longer feel threatening. They feel like invitations to remain present, grounded, and centered. You notice that the more you embody your new identity, the less you need external validation, and the more life naturally organizes itself in your favor. Stabilizing the new identity also involves patience and compassion toward yourself. Even as the energy settles, old habits or fears may flicker briefly, like shadows in the sunlight. These are not failures but reminders of the transformation that has taken place. By observing without judgment, maintaining energetic consistency, and allowing the new self to gradually crystallize, you anchor your reality shift permanently. You learn that the essence of manifestation is not in pushing for results, but in becoming the self that naturally attracts them. This is the quiet power of alignment. The new identity does not scream, it radiates. It does not demand, it magnetizes. It is subtle, invisible to the untrained eye, yet it shapes every aspect of your life with precision. And the more you embody it, the more effortless, joyful, and expansive your reality becomes. As you continue on this journey, it's important to pause and reflect on everything you've passed through. The confusion, the grief, the restlessness, the void, all of it was part of the process. What may have felt like loss or failure was never that. It was recalibration, a quiet but profound realignment of your consciousness. You were never lost. You were being prepared, reshaped, and lifted to a frequency that can hold the reality you've been longing for. The identity phase, the collapse of the old self, and the void are not detours. They are the essential paths of transformation. They are the invisible architecture behind every true manifestation, the unseen scaffolding upon which the new self builds itself. And now, as the new identity stabilizes, you can see the results not just in your external world, but in the subtle ways you carry yourself, in the ease of your decisions, in the flow of your energy, and in the quiet confidence that radiates from within. Remember that transformation is not a finish line. It is a continuous evolution. Each phase you have passed through strengthens your awareness, deepens your self-trust, and expands your capacity to create effortlessly. The turbulence you once feared has become the evidence of your resilience, the void has become the fertile ground of your new potential, and the alignment you now feel is the proof that your inner reality has shifted before your outer world. So, carry this understanding with you. Every wave of discomfort, every moment of uncertainty, every flicker of doubt is not a sign of failure but a signal of growth. You are moving from limitation to possibility, from reaction to creation, from fear to alignment. Trust the process. Honor the phases.